So you just got done watching one of my favorite movies of all time, and I'm curious how you liked it.
Well, this movie was terrible.
Ah!
It's showtime.
Eric,
Yes, Tig.
so you just got done watching one of my favorite movies of all time.
That is true. I just got done at your behest watching The Ice Pirates.
Yes. And I'm curious how you liked it.
Well, this movie was terrible.
Ah!
It took me 5 consecutive nights to watch it. I was only able to get through about 20 minutes at a time. If it wasn't for the fact that we were going to be doing this video, I definitely would not have finished it.
I am honestly shocked and disappointed because when I picked this movie for you, I was like, he's gonna effing love this movie because it's so off the wall, but it's got a story, but the characters are kind of like nutty. And I was like, he's gonna love it. I watched it that night that you told me you were gonna watch it. I'm going through the scenes in my head thinking, oh, he must be dying at this point right now.
I was dying, just not in the way that you thought I'd be dying.
Ah.
I heard that. From the absolutely awful costumes to the terrible set design.
I know the budget was $9 million.
Wow, yeah, that is a shoestring budget. I'll say this. All right, let me get to the good stuff. Robert Urich, good old Spencer for Hire.
Right.
He's one of those actors who you feel like you've seen them in a million different things before. And then I brought up his IMDb page, and it turns out I've literally never seen a single thing he's been in ever.
I 100% agree with that. He is one of those people that for some reason I feel familiar with, but I don't know why.
Yeah, and I will say that he did a good job playing that sort of aw shucks charming rogue character. He had that sort of almost Han Solo-ish, but not rough and more comedic thing going on, and he did a good job with that. I will also say that Mary Crosby as the princess was not only just delightful to look at, she was very beautiful, but she was really good in the role as well. They were clearly inspired by Princess Leia.
A little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I've taken the precaution of reprogramming the vid so that if anyone tampers with the water on board, this ship will self-destruct. Percy, keep an eye on them.
Yes, ma'am.
Percy, huh?
Yes, sir.
But you're a real tough guy, aren't you?
Let me demonstrate.
Ow! Other than that, I guess it was fun to spot the early appearances of people like Ron Perlman and what's her name?
Angelica Houston,
John
Matuzak. When I was a kid, because this was one of those movies that was on HBO every day kind of movie thing, so I used to watch it all the time. The reason I liked it, and the reason I haven't watched it in a long time, is it's really hard to find, so it was awesome that I got to see it again. For me, it was just a fun movie even now because it sort of reminds me of watching a D&D campaign.
I was vaguely familiar that the movie existed. But then when you said, oh yeah, these are pirates in space who are searching for a water planet and stuff, that's kind of what I had in my head was like, oh man, no, like that's a really cool cross-genre thing. I love that idea. And when it very first started, for a brief moment, I thought that they were really gonna sort of embrace the pirate thing, but have it be in a space world. But they kind of didn't.
So sometimes you would be watching something and being like, oh, this is cool. Or space herpy pops out of the turkey that Ron Perlman cooked, which you never hear about again. It just sort of is like this weird plot device that doesn't really do anything. It's just there for, I guess, for comedy's sake. But
right, that was totally a case of sort of violating Chekhov's gun, which you're familiar with that.
Yeah,
that right. You introduce a gun in the first act. It needs to fire in the third act.
So you just think about it the whole time.
And yeah, like the space herpes thing sort of didn't go anywhere. They get captured and they get brought in to be turned into slaves, and they're going to be castrated. Which I know a lot of people. I saw people on Twitter. They love that the chomping claws and stuff that are going to sort of chomp the dude's genitals off. The humor goes to like that length. Like, is this completely an absurdist comedy, or is it just a light comedy, or which is it?
How does that feel? A little snug. Good.
Some of the humor stuff occasionally worked, like the headless guy.
big macho guy.
Actually, I will say the climax had a really clever, that was a really clever conceit, the idea that they're moving so rapidly forward in time so that they're aging and the princess gets pregnant and gives birth to a child and eventually it's the son who comes back to save them. That was a really neat conceit. I actually really liked that a lot.
It was clever, and they're fighting versus the bad guys while they're going through it, so they're all aging as they're fighting.
Yeah, and so everything's just sort of fast forwarding, and I thought that was a really clever conceit.
You all right? I think. Good. I'm getting too old for this.
Some of the comedic beats during that sequence were pretty good, like the nanny. Princess comes out and the nanny is just
the skeleton.
That kind of stuff was pretty funny, especially by the end of the movie. You've sunk into the idea that, like, okay, this is what this movie is.
This is what this is.
It's outrageously goofy, and I'm sure people who love outrageously goofy movies would really enjoy this.
Out of all the characters, if you had to pick a character you liked the best, would it have been the main character then?
It would have been the princess. Her character appealed to me. I liked her sort of no-nonsense attitude. I liked that she usually had one up on the crew. She was usually thinking a couple of steps ahead of the crew.
So,
You're he is a she, and she thinks you're wonderful.
she does?
I like that she merged with the crew quite quick. She immediately just forces them onto the ship and says, you have to take me to my dad or I'm not going to let you have this ice. And they're just like, okay, that's just how it is. And they don't spend the rest of the movie fighting with each other.
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't, they didn't fall into that cliche of like, the overbearing woman who's a pain in the ass to deal with.
Well, then, I suppose we'll take this one. He's certainly not the biggest or the best, but that won't matter in the sewage plant.
There was actually one little scene that I thought, like, oh, that's a kind of a nice little nod. There's some sort of, I think, a bounty hunter or something. He drops an N-bomb. He calls him the N-word. Not to his face, because he's talking to someone else. And the guy that he's talking to was like, that's not acceptable.
The one guy walks up to the guy with the patch and says, the so-and-so with the N-word. And then he's like, I mean, the black gentleman.
I meant the black gentleman.
Black gentleman!
Sort of making clear, like, that's not cool at all. Like, that's not acceptable. I appreciated seeing that.
I liked that the robots, they do almost all the fighting. The bad guys show up and it's robots and they're like, well, get our robots in there. And then they're just fighting. And while they're fighting, the humans are just talking to each other while the robots are fighting each other in like every battle.
They're basically just talking shit. I wanted them to either go full bore pirates. There was a little bit of it where there was archaic dress, but in the science fiction setting, like the nanny was dressed like an old-fashioned nanny. Ron Perlman was dressed basically like a pirate, but they didn't really fully embrace that. And then the bad guys' outfits were these, I don't even know what.
The bad guys were medieval. They were just dressed in medieval knight's armor or something. There was a line from this movie that I used all through my childhood. And it's such a stupid line, but it's where they're on like a motorcycle and they're driving through a space station. There's a robot family. The motorcycle drives and runs over the baby. Another thing comes by and kills the other one. And the robot's like, mommy, baby, like just saying that. And I don't know why, but for some reason that was stuck in my head for a solid 30 something years. And I would say it all the time. But yeah, there are some silly scenes.
Some silly scenes.
Hey, Jackson. Hey, Bloods. Y'all want to pump some kitties?
Yeah.
No.
Hey, it's been a long time.
Finest kitties on Mithra.
No, get the hell out of here.
I did like, and is that Sloth? This dude, was that Sloth?
John Matuzak.
Yeah, I liked his character. There was just something like likable about him.
Him and Angelica Houston. I always liked Angelica Houston's character because she's sort of the silent assassin. She's always the one being sent to go kick everybody's butt.
Yeah, she's the one who kicks ass in the bar.
Angelica Houston kills the one guy, cuts his head off.
Feeling better?
Slashes the other guy and forces him to say he's sorry. And then 5-10 minutes later, when they're in the desert talking to the guy, they show up on that giant Mad Max truck thing to come after them again.
And that big vehicle, incidentally, is so hilarious. You can see just how small the budget was, right? Because it had that big giant set of wheels in the front.
Yeah.
But you could also see they didn't even bother to like paint out or cover the actual wheels of the vehicle that were in the front.
You got to do what you got to do. The twist ending is that it's Earth.
Yeah, I kind of saw that coming to mind.
Right. And so then as a kid, I was always like, well, that's why everything's so weird. You know, these aren't like even like Earthlings in a way. They don't even know about Earth. So everything's so strange.
I like how as a kid you were like thinking it through, like trying to logic out this movie.
Yeah,
like,
I had to make it make sense for me.
Now that was another thing too. They get to Earth. It was yet another, just like Brewster's Millions, like super abrupt ending. It's like, oh, we found it. Here we are. We're at the glorious planet. Yes, credits roll. Like what? Like, what?
I think they knew better not to keep going on and on at that point. I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of the people who love it are like me, where it just happened to be one of those cheesy movies that played a lot on TV when we were kids. So you just automatically, and you know how it was like back then when you only had HBO or whatever. It didn't have to be HBO, but anything where you just watch a movie so much you just end up loving it. It's like what's that syndrome called?
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, it's like Stockholm syndrome. Yeah. You just eventually go, yeah, well, it's just great, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely cannot insult anyone who loves the movie, especially given the era that it comes from, because it's like just as you described. I mean, when we were growing up, it was like you had whatever the dozen movies in any given month were on HBO, and they played over and over. And as kids, you watched them over and over, and you got to love whatever it was that you were watching. And in all fairness, I mean, it is zany and goofy and wild, and I completely can see why, as a kid, it would stick in your memories, because it's insane. I just, for me, watching it for the first time in 2021, it's really bad. I stuck it out, Ice Pirates, for you and for the viewers.
I'm disappointed mostly just because I thought you would like it because it's a cheesy sci-fi and everything, but I 100% understand why you don't. I think that's fair, but I'm glad you made it through.
And I will say, if for people out there who they have fond memories of this movie, you should definitely revisit it to see if it holds up for you, because that's often fun to do. For people who appreciate this sort of thing, and I know there's a lot of folks out there who appreciate just these sort of zany, low budget, wacky, so bad that they're good kind of movies, actually might really enjoy this.
They're on to us.
So this could only mean one thing?
What can it mean?
It means that now I have to watch something?
Now you have to watch something. And we're going to go even further back in time. We're going to go to the 1960s. Knowing that you are a big fan of Clash of the Titans, and I am as well, I'm going to send you back to 1963 to see Jason and the Argonaut.
That's awesome.
So watch that one, and we will come back in a few days and talk about that.
So I hope you all enjoyed that. Like and subscribe. Leave some comments down below for us to read. And
if I am wrong, tell me in the comments. I want to hear about why I am wrong to despise this movie.
Let Eric know. You can check out our Patreon at Nerd Out With Me. And thanks for hanging out at the movie club.